Hello and welcome to Shouting. I blew out the mic there. I'm going to start again. We can keep that on. Okay. Hello and welcome to Shouting Over the Static. Yeah, this is actually one of the full game episodes.
Do you want to take a third try of it, mate?
I'm going to take a third go. I think it would be funny, however, if we did keep all of this in.
I'm keeping all of it in. You can't stop me.
All right. Third time's the charm. I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to go for it. Okay. Hello and welcome to Shouting Over Static. I'm your host for the week, Dylan, and I'm joined by Mark.
Yo.
And Jack.
Hello.
I'm going to ask both of you together how it's going because, you know, I love chaos.
All right, so Jack, we will do a countdown, and then at the same time, we'll both just start talking. All right, so 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm doing okay actually.
Bad, mate.
Sick. That wasn't. Jack delayed a little bit, so I got that. That was. I like
damn
that.
it.
I appreciate that, Jack. Okay, so this week we are talking about our game of the month. I'm just gonna skip to this. Our game of the month, and it's a bit late. I think we're 2 weeks after we should have recorded it now.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I think we did the last one a bit late anyway.
Yeah,
so.
we did. And we're going to be talking about Bastion, which is like a 2011 game.
Yep.
From Supergiant Games, who was started.
I think it's older than 2011.
I think it might be 2010, yeah, and it was
Maybe.
2011 when it came out on some.
I actually think it came out on 2011. Initial release date 20th of July 2011.
Boom. Boom, boom, boom.
Holy shit.
I'm doing finger guns, boy.
Mate, you smashed it. This
20
game was in development for ages, wasn't it?
Yeah. This game, it was made by 7 people, to be fair. I mean that.
Yeah, because I remember when they first started developing it, because the writer from Supergiant, Greg Kasavin, used to be on GameSpot.
Yeah.
And then he went and joined EA, and he did a bunch of work on Red Alert 3.
Yeah.
And then when he left, I remember it being like, oh, the writer from Red Alert 3 has formed his own studio and they're making something.
Yeah.
Shit, man. Okay, yeah, sorry, I shouldn't be so blown away.
No,
so immediately in the episode by something I should have already known. But yeah, I thought it was a bit older than that. Sorry, my bad. I derailed you completely there, Dylan.
No, it's fine. That you kind of said what I was going to go on to say. It was made by Supergiant Games. That was started by these 2 guys who used to work for EA and worked on, as you said, because I only found this out recently. Made Command and Conquer 3 and Red Alert 3. And yeah, 7 guys made this game, and you can kind of understand because, like you say, it sounds like it was in production for a while, and it's not a super in-depth game, but it's a very. There's a lot of love in this game, and the fact that it is only made by 7 people, I think, maybe you can tell for the fact that it's such a personal game. It's I don't know, it's got a lot of feel to it, and you can, when you're playing this, you can definitely tell. But I don't know. We'll start with, what were you guys playing on first? That's what we usually go for, isn't it? Were you both just playing it on PC?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I was playing it on PC as well, and so as with every time I play a game on PC, I do actually have a few comments here about the quality of that port. But we can get into that maybe a bit later. Yeah, there were some issues with that PC port, which I think may only be because I'm playing it at a preposterously high resolution.
So it could be entirely your fault.
Yeah.
So I played this game a while ago. I got it for free from, I think anyway, at Christmas or something. It was one of these. I've said this before. Actually. It was one of these 12 Days of Christmas Apple giveaways. So I ended up playing it on the iPad, which I think is quite fun that I get to talk about the crazy iPad control scheme a little bit.
How do they do it? Do they just have I guess overlay of buttons, or is it just?
So there's 2 options. You can just have the sort of virtual controls.
Yeah.
And play it standard. It's just like an analog stick and buttons basically.
Yeah.
But they've also got this sort of, I think they call it the smart control system or something like that. and it's kind of what you expect from phone games in that it's got you go to where you tap, or like it follows your
Hmm.
finger as you drag it around, and then you can double
Okay.
tap to dodge, and it automatically attacks nearby enemies. So you can
Right.
switch
Yeah.
between your weapon, like whether you're having, because you can have two weapons, you know this, uh,
Funnily enough.
and you can switch between those just by tapping the screen, and it will automatically attack. So it's quite simple, but it does actually work really well. I mean, they've clearly thought about this port to the iPad, um, and I think I did end up whenever I played it, I did end up actually just switching to the virtual console because the virtual controls because I don't know, it feels more like you're part of the game then, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Hmm.
But the first time I
Not
played it,
just
I
like.
did play it with the tap thing because I think this is probably going to be one of our key points today. I think a big part of Bastion, the gameplay's like fine, it's not bad or anything, but it's a very just like game. It's just a game, you know. In my head, I've always Bastion. My memories of Bastion have always kind of been well that it's incredible for one, but it was never
Hmm.
really about the gameplay.
Yeah.
So having that sort of tap control system, making it quite simple, basically meant I was just going through the story, and I think I don't know, for me at least, that's kind of the main takeaway from Bastion.
Hmm. I mean, yeah. I mean, I personally think that the gameplay in Bastion is it's simple but very very broad.
Yeah,
So I think there is, at least for me, I found enormous value in experimenting with the different weapons and trying to work out what my favourite combo of melee and ranged gear is, and then sort of upgrading it and working out like how to get it better. And obviously, there's the upgrade tree
Yeah.
goes in two different directions for kind of each weapon. You can mix and match that. So I got something out of the combat.
yeah,
And I think, and interestingly enough, so I haven't played this game in years, but not as long as perhaps I thought I did. And I feel like I picked a completely different set of weapons this time than the last time I played it as well.
that's
So
interesting.
yeah, there is. I don't know. I in my head, I feel like maybe yeah, that could be an oversimplification of the controls to just completely remove the combat from it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know the thought I'm trying to get to here.
Well, I think so. The combat does remain. So you still have to kind of focus on the combat in the iPad version, the smart controls. So it does automatically attack, but obviously you've still got to do like you've got to do your shield and you've got to make sure that you dodge and get on the right side of certain enemies because I mean, what like the armored lunks are a bit harder to attack and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so there is still an element of thought to it. It's not just taking you through the story, and obviously all the weapons and picking your weapon combinations that's still in it. And I do think those are excellent part. Like I think they're really good in a way because they do let the story just happen. And I mean,
yeah,
you can go in like, and I did as well. You sort of focus on what weapons you're doing and how you want to use it. But I think it's that sort of takeaway of that's not the bit that lasted with me. There's so many games I've got that the thing that lasts with me is how it feels to play. So like Dishonored, right? Obviously, there's a good story in that, and it's an enjoyable
mm,
story. But I think the thing I always think about is how it feels to play that game.
yeah,
And like, I guess the
yeah, for
same with
sure.
we were just talking about this before we started recording, like Crackdown as well. Like fuck the story in that. It's just fun to jump around.
Yeah.
But
Mm,
for this, at least for me, so obviously this is going to be different for everyone, but at least for me, the takeaway I've always had from Bastion is sort of how the game itself made you feel, not how playing it made you feel.
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would 100% agree with that. Bastion is it is such a singularly effective like tone and style piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like as just as a combination of writing and music and art design and like just as a whole presentation, Bastion is like incredibly evocative
Yeah.
and it leaves such a strong image. And that is 100%. Bastion is far more of a like just like a multi-sensory experience
Yeah.
rather than a man. It feels good to hit B and X
Yeah.
because that is what the combat is, right?
Yeah. It's very simple.
Yeah,
And
and depending on what weapons you've got, you'll be pressing B and X and the left trigger for shield in different orders. But yeah, no matter what weapon combination you have, you are always pressing the left trigger for shield and pressing B and X to attack
yeah.
in different either ranged or close up. But I totally agree. Bastion is a lot more of a feeling as an experience rather than a feeling as a. It's not a platinum game, is it?
No.
No.
It's not about can you hit which time and dodge at just the right moment and shit like that. Yeah, totally.
So I guess it's a very different experience from our last game, like because I mean that's exactly what Vanquish is, isn't it? It's instead of
Yeah,
which time, it's whatever they called it there.
fucking the arse system,
Yeah, something like that.
isn't it?
So I mean, for that, I think that's a really good example actually. Like thinking back to playing Vanquish, it was. I mean, obviously there were funny parts with the story and
Mm.
elements to that were enjoyable, but it's that when I think back to Vanquish, it's the playing the game. So yeah, I mean that comparing it to Platinum games, I think is the perfect example
Yeah.
of what we're trying to
So,
get across.
Mark, did you play it with a controller then, even though you were playing
Yeah. I
PC?
played it
Okay.
through with an Xbox One controller.
Huh. Okay. I mean, I was using mouse and keyboard.
Right. Okay.
How was that? Because it seemed like a really good controller game.
Yeah. It was, I guess. So, I guess once you got into it, once you sort of, I guess, learned the muscle, like with any game, you'll have that muscle memory from just playing it, and it took a bit of time to sort of figure out where all of the controls are and where all like my fingers need to be in order to have easy access to basically most of the controls. And I guess I found myself not using or not blocking perhaps as
Yeah.
much as I should do.
See, I think
So
that's
what are we
why.
talking here? Like WSA and D, mouse control, left click, right click. Like take us through some of the basic. Because I'm actually really curious how that would work. Because with a
I've
controller, it kind of it feels like quite a natural control scheme. But with a mouse and keyboard,
yeah. I've,
you don't. I think you'd end up using some fingers pretty regularly that maybe you wouldn't want to use.
I think I think shift I'm trying to remember now what the actual controls were for it, but I think shift was block. I'm pretty sure that Q was to use the I guess your like little item, I guess your little
Your black
yeah
potion
yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Black Tonic.
And
that's
then
it.
I'm trying to think what else it was. Try-
Is it like left click for melee,
yeah
right
yeah
click for
yeah
range attack?
yeah I think so
Shit,
yeah.
man.
See, I was going to say the same as you, Matt. I mean, like what you just said about the sort of simplicity of the gameplay, it seems like having to think about how you're going to control the game really shouldn't be an experience you have with this game, which I think is why I always thought of it as a controller game, because obviously, as people who play games, I think for someone coming in from like fresh who doesn't play games really, you'd be fine playing them on a keyboard because you're going to have to get used to it either way.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all know how controllers work, right? We know how
Just
keyboards
about.
work too, but I think there's a bit more to it. Whereas a controller, you sit down and basically any game, you know the feel of it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Bastion doesn't feel like the kind of game you should have to sort of get used to controlling. It's
Yeah.
it's a kind of jump in and run around game, right? Because it's
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's I guess I mean it didn't take me too long to sort of get to
No,
grips with the control scheme of it, but there are certainly I guess parts of the game or aspects of the game that I might have perhaps been more exposed to if I was using it on a controller. And
Yeah.
like I said, I found myself at times when I'd get into a situation where there was just a bunch of enemies there, instead of blocking and doing the sane thing, I'd find myself sort of, I guess, running into it a lot more and not really keeping an eye on my health that much. But also, yeah, I guess I still got the enjoyment out of it despite having some of the control issues on it. But
Yeah.
I still think it's a thoroughly enjoyable game. I think it's interesting that we've all sort of played it in a different way as well.
Yeah.
Was it free aim with the mouse? Sorry, Dylan, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Just one last question about using the mouse and keyboard. Did it still have the lock on, Jack, or were you free aiming with the mouse when you were aiming like weapons?
I think to a certain extent. So if there was an enemy in your certainly when I was using my ranged weapon, if there was an enemy in the range, I think it would auto lock
Right. Okay.
sometimes. But I know uh, quite often I found myself just aiming freehand.
that was the same with the controller, right? There, because you can aim freehand so that you can like shoot random detritus around the map, right?
But obviously, when you're aiming freehand with the controller, you're rarely ever doing that as a combat solution, just because it's when your freehand is literally just rotate the stick to just spin round in a circle.
Yeah.
It's a lot less nuanced than mouse control, which
Yeah,
is
definitely.
you can move it anywhere within the like an XY coordinate system.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking, when you're going into combat,
That would be really
is because obviously when you're going into combat on the controller, your primary interface is to start locking onto people to make sure you get that shot that you want.
Yeah.
Or you use like the musket or something, with a bit of width on it, so you can be a bit more loose. But I feel like if I had a mouse and I was playing it, I'd be playing it like a lot more like clicking on bad dudes,
Yeah,
almost like playing Diablo on the PC.
Yeah.
And suddenly all the attacks that are like ranged attacks that you target onto an enemy are way more useful and viable, because you can just click a dude and you attack them, and you can click a dude and you warp to them, as opposed to on like the controller where you have to kind of try and aim in the right direction as you're spinning a stick around on the. Yeah, I don't know. I was just curious because I feel like that would like so. Did you have a go at a lot of the combat challenges, Jack?
So I had a go at the first couple of them. I feel like it's certainly, I guess, something that I should have done when I finished it. Go back and just go through some of it, because I know at the time that I was encountering some of them, I didn't really have a lot of upgrades on a couple of the weapons that. So the first couple of weapons that you unlock, I didn't really invest in upgrading them too much. And so when I got to the point where you could do those challenges, I I found myself, I guess, sort of underpowered with the weapons, so it wouldn't be an effective way of completing those challenges and getting the top reward for doing them. So I had a go at a
Right.
couple of the initial ones, but I guess towards the end I didn't really, yeah, like I say, I perhaps should have gone back and tried to go through some of them, but I sort of left most of them untouched.
I just feel like there's some of those that I think if I had mouse control, I would have found some of those challenges a lot easier than I did.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
also, when I realised that the top result for those challenges is always just a new skill of some sort, I was less intrigued to do them anyway. Sorry,
Okay.
Dylan, you were going to say something minutes ago that I interrupted to talk about mouse control.
I think it wasn't anything particularly vital. I can't really remember that. So I thought we should at least have a. We managed to get this far without any sort of introduction to this game, so I thought we some
Yes.
kind of background. So I don't know if either of you guys want to take it, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, feel free, mate. Run through it.
So Bastion is based around this event called the Calamity. So you play as the kid, your whitehead protagonist, waking up on a floating island. Basically, I think it is. So you wake up in this kind of destroyed-looking location, and you run around as the ground basically forms beneath you. You have to destroy a bunch of stuff, kill a bunch of things, and the entire time you've got this really cool old guy. Essentially, he narrates your actions, right? Which I think
Yeah.
is one of my favorite parts about the
Yeah,
game.
that is. Yeah. Okay, I guess we'll get onto that in a bit, but yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good thing.
And so, if there's obviously certain things he does say to just move the story along, but if you do not necessarily weird things, but just things that aren't necessarily necessary, he'll add to it, which I think is this excellent thing. But you
And
find
like,
out that sorry, go ahead.
in that same vein, quickly, like he will riff on shit that you do as well. So like, I would get a new weapon, and then I would, at the very first chance I get, immediately go back to the weapons I've been using at that point, and he would say shit like, the kid couldn't forget his old favourites and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and
Yeah.
there'd always be unique lines, but he
Yeah.
would always just be commenting on like your play style, and it's like if you preferred using certain skills and stuff, he'd be like, oh, the kid. It's like, oh, the kid just couldn't get over the grenade and stuff like that. Like it was, yeah, it's really cool the way that he will not only narrate the game, but he will directly reference things that you do. Like it's well made triggers for sure for
Yeah.
all of his dialogue. It's incredible.
There are times when you're playing that, and it's just like there's no way they possibly could have known I was going to do that. It's, but I mean, obviously they did, and it's just excellently done. I think it really helps with that feeling of feeling in the game, of like actually being part of the story, which is, I think, really what helps it along. And it's also kind of what makes the game so unique, right? I can't think of really any other game that does that kind of thing in that kind of way.
The Stanley Parable, and that's it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
But I guess
probably.
that came out after, right? That was what, like 2012?
I wonder when the demo for Stanley Parable came out, because or like the original mod that was free before it became like a full paid game.
Right, I think it was 2013. I think 2013 was the full game because the only one of the achievements was like don't play it for 5 years, right? And that got fulfilled like officially recently.
So, Bastion was released on July the 20th, 2011. The Stanley Parable, as a mod, as a free mod for Half-Life 2, was released on July 27th, 2011.
Oh wow.
So, Bastion is older than the original Stanley Parable by a week.
Nice. So I mean, yeah, I guess they were kind of, but there's no way that influenced Stanley Parable and the other way
No,
around.
not at all. Yeah,
So
I think it was just clearly a good time for people writing clever
meta.
dialogue.
I mean, that was the time of like really meta things, right? Well, that was when Community was big, I guess. Was it? Yeah.
Mate,
I feel like that's then.
2011? I don't know.
Probably. People loved meta stuff then.
I'm so meta, even this acronym.
Exactly. I was just thinking of that.
So, yeah, sorry, you're talking about the narrator and the calamity. The narrator's so good that you could have an entire podcast just talking about how fucking clever that system is.
Like you guys have mentioned it, but it's just like the lines. So they've obviously written down all of these lines, but it's just the fact that they know that they would. So like I found myself at times like very early on, I just kept like basically destroying everything that I could with like the sword or whatever it was, like I forget the name of the weapon.
sail hammer.
Yeah, I just kept hitting everything with it, and it like the narrator would just come out of nowhere and say, "Oh, the, the kid didn't get anything out of hitting the like the kid didn't get anything out of hitting the bricks except pleasure," and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
It's just like tiny little scripted lines like that because I guess it's like they know that people are just gonna go around and do stuff like that, and like I found if you stayed in like the same area for a while, the narrator would just come and randomly say, "Oh, the kid quite enjoyed his time sitting in the same place." It's like what?
Yeah. Well, because I think I don't know if it's only the first time or if it happens a few times, but the first time you die, like if you by falling off.
Yeah.
He goes, and then the kid fell to his death. Only kidding. and
Yeah.
then obviously you fall back in and carry on. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are very obvious things that are going to happen, right? Obviously, someone's going to fall off for the first time, and obviously, in any game, if things are destructible, someone is going to destroy it all.
Yeah.
So obviously, they're going to think about those. But then, like as we were saying, there's just other things that they must have had someone just play it and be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, people seem to do this a lot. Let's add a narration for that kind of thing. And yeah, I think they just nailed it on that, didn't they? But the fact that that guy is Rux, right? The narrator that's his name, isn't it? Rux? Yeah, Rux.
Yes.
Yes, that sounds familiar.
And so Rux ends up being the first guy you meet in the Bastion, which is so Solondia is the place where it is that the calamity has happened, and they've got this whole essentially like a emergency plan of go to the Bastion and that will fix things.
Yes.
It's a safe place and you can fix things there. And so that's what the first little bit is. You're going to the Bastion, and then from there everything works out. You've got Rux basically telling you you've got to go and collect all these things to fix the Bastion, and then the Bastion will fix everything else.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting as well that this character, Rux, who is narrating and is giving you all the things, he is literally just the stranger from The Big Lebowski as portrayed by Sam Elliott. He's like shock of white hair, big white moustache, talks like a aged cowboy. Rux is fucking great. I got a lot of love for Rux and his entire performance. He's literally just Sam Elliott as the stranger in Big Lebowski. Like I think he even wears a little cowboy hat. He's the fucking best.
I mean, that's another part of it, isn't it? These characters are just. I don't even know if the other ones are, because that's another part. As you play through this game, you meet a few more characters. Not many. I think it's like 2, right? And you find out a bunch of stuff about this world, which I don't think we'll go into it, because I think honestly this is the kind of game that I think everyone should play to experience this story.
Because it's not long either.
No. I mean it's easy to get through, and it's like a tenner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
if that even.
Yeah, I think on Steam and the Xbox at least it's a tenner, but you could probably find it somewhere. I don't know actually if they have any physical copies of Bastion. Probably not, right?
I bet there's a way to get a physical copy of Bastion for the Xbox 360.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so yeah, there's a whole story to unravel of basically working from this Bastion and working to fix it. There's a few people you meet along the way who really add to this story. And it results in, I think there's a few choices you can make at the end. Mostly it's...
Yeah, you get like one... No, you get 2, don't you? You get like one big choice at the end, and then there's a smaller choice before that.
Yeah. And so I think either way, both of these choices don't really actually affect it. I think it's... The end choice is still basically just the end. You get a slightly different cutscene. And the choice before that slightly affects one of those cutscenes.
Yeah.
But it's still just like it's such an experience that getting to that point and making those choices still feels like a huge choice. And even when you know that they don't really matter, it feels like such an incredible thing to be. I don't know how to explain what I mean, but I'm sure you guys understand. There's these. You really get involved in the story, so.
Yeah, I don't know. Like so yeah, it is. So Bastion, the 2011 video game by Supergiant Games, is a classic brawler. It's top down. You move around and you have a melee attack or a ranged attack, and you fight dudes, and you move through areas, and you collect new weapons and upgrades, and you fight bad guys, and you fight bigger bosses, and you collect characters, and you play level by level to collect shards, or eventually. It's not even shards, is it? What's the first thing you're getting?
Cores. So you
get cores, and then it's shards, isn't it?
Shards. Something happens, which means you have to collect shards instead of cores.
Yeah, and there is a story. I personally think that we may have to get into the story here because there's some story stuff, especially all the story stuff with Zolf, who is the Ura that you meet. I think is really, really well done.
Okay, well, so let's say at this point, if you are listening and haven't played Bastion...
Spoilers are about to happen.
Spoilers are going to happen, but I think you should stop play it and then come back to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually would agree, because it is well worth that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so excellently done that having it, the first experience you have of it being actually playing it rather than listening to it, I think is going to be worth it. So even if it loses us viewers halfway through, listeners halfway through. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's delve in.
Yeah, so, as you said, the story is about this thing called the Calamity, right?
Yeah.
And also, that I've demonstrated to those listening. I found if you search for Rux from Bastion and Sam Elliott, you get two identical pictures. um, yeah, so there's this thing called the Calamity, and you wake up and everything's fucked. Is that a fair way to put it?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
like literally everything is fucked.
Is it implied that the Calamity? So this is it. The thing about this game that I think is really clever, and the reason I want to talk about the story is because the story does. It is like anti-Metal Gear. This story is all about suggesting and hinting and implying a much broader sort of story full of intrigue than like what it actually explicitly states is quite minimal, and you usually have to go quite a way to get what's explicitly stated.
Yeah, so like there's bits in what you find like a journal and things like that, don't you? That sort of expand on the
Yeah,
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's like if you find the journal and you talk to people, then you will get a little bit of story, and then you'll kind of get the I think the biggest info dumps outside of the main plot, because the main plot is you rescue these people, and then there's a journal, and that causes Zolf to run away,
Yeah.
and then destroy the monument, and then you have to start going and getting shards to fix the monument, and moves you on to the next phase of the story until you go and you rescue Zolf and Zia, and you sort of save the day. But it's when you hoot on the magic peace pipe and you black out and you go into that combat arena, and then you have to fight 10 waves of enemies while someone explains half of the story to you. And then there's another one which is, it's not when you fucking rip on his crazy Ura tobacco, it's, what do you take? Do you eat some stew or something, and then you go and you find out all of Zia's backstory, and that explains sort of the other half of how the
Yeah.
Calamity came to be,
Yeah.
and it reveals it reveals that the Calamity effectively is your own fault. It's the fault of those from Ceylondia.
Yeah. So I think they're called the Who Knows Where, right? You go to Who Knows Where
Yes.
and you do these little. I think basically there's one for each character, right? I don't know if there's one for Rux actually.
I don't think there's one for Rux. You either smoke on Zolf's peace pipe, and that gets you the background on the kid, and explains what the kid's deal is and how he got to the beginning of the game. And then I think it's something to do with Zia. I think you have some stew or something that Zia's made.
Yeah.
And then that gives you the background on Zia.
So there's also when you do the new game plus, there's another two Who Knows Where.
Oh really?
Yeah. So
Okay, right.
you only get them when you play the new game plus, which I think is quite cool. But again, like you say, it's quite hard to get the full explicitly stated story. Because yeah, those provide like a big part of it, because this whole Calamity basically is revealed that I think it's Zolf's dad was working with, or Zia, maybe one of their dads.
Zia's dad.
Zia's dad, because
Zia's
that's why
father.
she's in Ceylondia, right?
Yeah, and you find Zia's father's journal, and then
Yeah.
Zolf reads it, and Zolf's like, well, I gotta fucking bounce. I got shit to do, because you guys are motherfuckers.
Yeah.
That's
So
basically how that goes.
you find out that Zia's dad basically was forced to build this weapon for Ceylondia that would end the war between Ceylondia and the Ura, which is where Zolf and Zia are from, their Ura. And it turns out that Zia's dad sabotaged the weapon such that it wouldn't just destroy the Ura, but would destroy Ceylondia as well in the Calamity. So that's kind of the whole background to what is happening, and obviously why there's some tension between you and Zolf.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it is quite hard to. You have to sort of be in the game to get that, which I think again maybe why is such it makes it such a big part of. It feels like we were saying at the beginning, it's a big part of feeling you remember the story, the experience rather than the game because that is what it all is. You've constantly got this narrator telling you what's going
Mm.
on. You go into these who knows where places, and obviously there's waves of enemies to fight. But I think every time you do those, even though that is a big part of it, you're doing it to listen to that story. And
Mm.
for me, at least, because I'm terrible, there's lots of games I play where that sort of thing. I'll not even on purpose. I'll just not pay enough attention, and I'll miss bits. But Bastion was one of those
Mm.
ones where you really do remember it, and I think it's
Yeah, like
because this
it.
story is so intriguing, and like you say, there's definitely more to it, you know.
It just does such a good job of giving you the story in well told bite-sized chunks. It doesn't do big grandiose cutscenes. It doesn't necessarily like you don't see the calamity happen. You don't
No.
get shown Zia's father working in his lab. There's no extended info dump apart from the Who Know Wheres, which in themselves are still gameplay sections that
Yeah,
serve a gameplay reward because you're earning tons and tons of XP that you can then go and spend.
yeah,
I think, yeah, it, it's a very well paced, well revealed story that is always sort of suggesting and hinting at its big reveals before just straight up giving you the little bit of plot that you need. And then I guess yeah, so at the end of it, as we sort of said, you bust Zolf runs away, and so you go on a mission to finally finish upgrading the Bastion. And then shit gets real, and the Uras attack the Bastion, and so you're like, right, I gotta go to the Bastion. Let's fucking rock. Oh no, you're like, I gotta go to the Ura and I gotta save the day. And you go out there and you bump into Zolf,
yeah,
and you
Yeah.
discover that the Ura have betrayed Zolf because they blame him for bringing the kid there, and you get big choice number one, which is right at the end of the game. Big choice number one: did you leave Zolf or did you carry Zolf to safety?
I
I.
ended up doing both because I played
Oh,
it
okay.
twice,
Yeah.
like 3 times. I think the first time I left him because I was bitter.
What
Yeah.
about you, Jack?
I carried him,
Yeah, I carried him too.
which I like. I. So wait, when you do that bit and you're walking through with him, I kind of got like a bit weirded out. I was like, am I like I don't have a way to defend myself? Am I just because initially all of the guys, like all of the Ura, are still attacking you,
Yeah,
and when you pick them up, they're still going at you, and then it takes some time after you've walked for a bit, they suddenly realize actually, this guy's trying to save Zolf.
it's just
Um,
yeah.
but like for that first initial bit of after you pick him up, I was like, shit, am I just gonna die with like carrying this guy?
Yeah,
Yeah, because they just start like that. That's it. So you pick him up. Oh, this comes immediately after you get given an incredibly powerful weapon that you use to just start wrecking people, and then
Yeah.
you roll up and you find Zolf as you've been just like decimating the Ura home area with this weapon, and then you find Zolf, and Zolf's getting fucked up, and it's like, yeah, your choice is leave Zolf, finish killing everyone, get out of there, or put down your weapon and carry Zolf to freedom. And everyone, if you do that, everyone starts shooting at you, and you can't defend yourself, and you're just like slowly walking, and like you're barely trying, like you're just trying to survive. I know it's an effective little moment
Mm.
yeah,
that then leads into the final choice. You return to the Bastion, and now the Bastion's fully upgraded, and you've saved the day. You discover that the Bastion serves a function. Like Rux has been saying this whole time that the Bastion is what's going to save everybody, and you discover that's because the Bastion can either literally rewind time to before the calamity, or it can become an airship that you can fly to somewhere new and try to rebuild society.
yeah.
but then it's heavily suggested that because it rewinds time, but completely rewinds time, it doesn't actually guarantee in any way that rewinding time won't prevent everything from happening again. And I even think someone says maybe this has all happened before.
Yeah, I think in the new game plus, it they even more sort of
Yeah.
it's kind of
Well,
just
I guess
like, yeah,
in
you've
the
done
new
this
game
before.
plus, it's like it almost becomes that meta commentary again, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's
So
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so what choices did people make?
I think the first time I chose to um, like use the airship because I didn't
Yeah,
trust
me too.
rewinding time.
Okay.
What about you, Jack?
Yeah, I chose the other one, the rewind the time to
Right.
before the whole calamity happened.
Should never mess with time, Jack.
Yeah, like my feeling on it, the way they present that choice felt very much like they were saying if you rewind time, you may bring everyone back, but this is all just going to happen again. And I was like, well, I've just saved Zolf. I've done my good deed. Let's the four of us go and we'll start a new society somewhere with this old dude and this angry dude and this girl who's sad and this kid who's quiet and we're gonna go start a new society somewhere else with hammers.
I feel like lots of societies are built on hammers, right? Freemasons. It's basically all that is.
Yeah, man.
No, I
Hammer
think
sock.
that whole trying to get you to so that when they're saying about the rewinding time, they really pull on your heartstrings with the whole you can sort of bring everyone back that's died. Because
Yeah.
you go around that game, so that's one thing we've not said. The calamity is basically because basically everyone has died in Solondia at least. Apparently a bunch of the Ura survived, but
Mm.
in Solondia at least, basically everyone's died. But they get turned to ash. So as you're going round, you come across a few of these, and they're just characters from that world. So you never met the characters, but they're people from that world
Hmm.
in like an ash statue, which you can destroy, which is a bit weird. But
There's
Yeah.
even a few points where it makes you destroy them, doesn't it?
yeah,
And the narrator will comment on it. Like to get
yeah,
access to like a certain button or whatever, it'll be surrounded by these ash statues, and you have to smash the ash statues up.
which is
Mm.
just a bit sad. And I think that really, because you've been doing that the entire time and seeing all these dead people, that whole promise of they'll all come back it's really sort of tempting,
Yeah.
which I think is great. The fact that it gets you to feel like that, you know.
Hmm.
And I mean that's just a mark of a good game, isn't it? When they get you to be so emotionally invested that that sort of choice that otherwise would be completely irrelevant. Like sometimes a game's choices might be like, oh, I'll get the better ending, or
Yeah.
I might get something better, and that's sort of what motivates you. The only thing that motivates this choice is how you feel towards the game, but it
Yeah.
still ends up being quite a hard choice. And I think it is because of those kind of things, those little things. And like, I think the first time you come across an ash statue is in the saloon just before you find the Bastion,
Oh yeah, that sounds familiar.
and
Yeah.
it's the saloon owner, and if you hit him, so he's out the way, you don't have to hit him. But if you hit him, Rux goes. I can't remember what his name was. But whatever his name was, he goes. Oh yeah, he always said he wanted his ashes scattered in this place, which is kind of dark but nice.
Yeah, it's clever. It's definitely got clever bits to it. This story, and I like that it's got a choice at the end that you can sort of feel justified picking either
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Like so many games with a big final choice have like this is obviously the good one, this is obviously the bad one. And if you pick the bad one, it's because you're picking the bad one. Whereas this one is like, no, these are both totally legit choices to make.
yeah. It's. I mean, this is part of what we've been saying this entire time, isn't it? It's just. That's just how great I think there's how well to put together this game is. I mean, you said it. You sort of briefly touched on it at the beginning. Everything in this game is so well tied together and so well made. So even though the gameplay might be a bit simple, it's just like BX and LT. It's simple enough that it works well with the game, and the story and the art design all goes so well together. And then the music always comes in at these perfect times and really gets you feeling into the game.
Oh man, we need to talk about the fucking music in this game. Holy shit, we
And I
have
think
not
this
even
all-
gotten started.
It just all comes together so well that this choice at the end, and this choice being part of that coming together so well, you can tell that the people who've crafted this have, like, they crafted this because they wanted to. They wanted to make this story. They wanted to give you this experience, and I think it really comes across in that you can feel about this. Like, that's proof that it worked. I think,
Yeah.
at least for me.
Yeah, it's just totally it's the complete package, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Like each piece, each element goes together in just the right way, and the fucking music. We have to talk about the music in this game, man. Holy shit! Shout outs to Darren Korb is his name, composer Darren Korb, because he put a soundtrack together.
Yeah.
The Bastion soundtrack is just sublime. Like the way that he sort of couples his own, like, the guitar with some of these, like, he seems to alternate between some more like the classic, like, Western frontiers instruments like guitars and banjos, and sort of your less tonal drums. But then he'll bring in like more Eastern flavour in it. I feel like sometimes you get something that goes either a bit more Spanish, and it goes that way, or it'll go almost like a sitar, like an Indian line
yeah,
to
for
it.
sure.
And the man just the way that he uses stringed instruments in this soundtrack is just fucking nuts.
Yeah.
It's just nuts.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's just nuts, mate. It's fucking good.
It's insane. Like, I think it's that combination between, obviously you've got like Rux and the Kid, who are these cowboy frontier people, like you say, and then you've got Zolf and Zia, who are, I don't really know what, but obviously sort of a more of an Eastern Oriental vibe to them. Or
Yeah.
maybe like more of an Indian subcontinent kind of vibe to them.
Yeah, they've definitely. It seems to be a sort of a pastiche of like Middle Eastern, African,
It's a very East meets
Indian
West kind of
styles.
thing.
Yeah, like you've got there are robes, and there's like it's very much that kind of thing. It's definitely got an Eastern thing to it.
Yeah, and I think that comes across in the music really well. There are points when like it will go from being a very Western sort of music feel to, like you say, this kind of exotic, otherworldly feel to it.
Yeah. And I think that, like,
in just the blink of a moment, like it'll go together so well.
I think
and these things will come in and work together.
That coupled with just the, I guess, underlying style to the game as well. The fact that, yeah, like Celondia is this other place which is quite peaceful, and the calamities happen, and it's just sort of, I guess it comes together with the clash of styles in the music choice as well. You know, we've had this sort of, I guess, I imagine Celondia was a peaceful place and it's been ruined by the calamity.
It definitely was.
And we have this sort of clash of, I guess, you know, before and after, and it's sort of portrayed through the music as well.
Well, I mean, Celondia definitely wasn't a peaceful place because the calamity was the result of a really horrendous war, I think is the implication. So that's that whole thing with Zia's dad, right? The calamity was essentially like the secret weapon, the final weapon to end the war between Celondia and Yura. So I think that's kind of where this frontier feel comes from, is that they've not settled down into a peaceful civilization. They're at war and kind of
So the Darren Korb, actually, he describes his soundtrack as acoustic frontier trip hop.
That's really incredibly accurate.
That's incredibly accurate. Yeah, he says that he wanted to evoke both the American frontier and an exotic fantasy world, and apparently recorded all of it in his closet in his New York City apartment.
Brilliant.
Oh, wow.
along with the sound effects, and apparently more than 3,000 lines of narration.
Oh wow.
And they were all recorded in his closet.
Oh no way.
So good for him. Yeah.
I'm in my head. I know it's probably not true, but in my head, I'm imagining a really tiny closet that they got the guy to do Rux's voice in. Like he's literally just stood there, surrounded by coats, just going. He always wanted his ashes to be scattered in this place.
Yeah, because in my head as well, the narrator for Rux looks like Rux.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, in my head, it's literally. I can't imagine anybody but Rux saying all those things.
So, everyone listening who cares should Google Logan Cunningham, because that is in fact the narrator. And guess what? Doesn't look like Rux.
That's just sad. Oh man,
In
he
my
doesn't
head-
even look remotely like Rux.
Yeah, in my head, it is just Sam Elliott. But in real life, he actually is just quite a handsome, middle-aged black
Yeah.
guy. So, good for him.
But I think I mean his voice suits it so well.
Yeah, it's just a yet another testament to just how well put together all the elements of this game are, that when you hear Rux's voice and you look at the picture of Rux, you can't imagine anything other. There is such a unity there between the artistic direction and the vocal direction and the musical direction and the way it all comes together, that you can't imagine Rux being anything other than a little digitized Sam Elliott.
There's just no disconnect, is there? I mean, you have so many times in this game where you kind of allow this suspension of disbelief just so you can keep playing, and you don't. I think there's plenty of games where you don't feel like. I mean, like you just kind of play the game because it's fun to play, right? But this is one of those ones where I think there's just, like you say, it's the unity between everything is so good. There's so little disconnect that it's practically impossible to play it and not feel part of it, because the gameplay is also so well tied into everything and how you interact with it, that there isn't a disconnect between you and the game either. There's no disconnect between the things. That it all ties into one. You become part of that. And I think it's just remarkable. It's just how more people haven't played this is insane.
I think it has done quite well for them, to be fair.
Oh no, definitely.
I think it is like a multi-million seller
as well. Like
it sold 3 million, I think.
There's so much more to this game that I don't know if we'll have much more time to talk about it, but there's like so much more to this game that we haven't really touched on. Like, so when you're upgrading the Bastion, you get, so every core that you get like a different unlock, so you can have like your arsenal, your alchemist sort of distillery, your lost and found, like the shrine. So much stuff to do with that, and each one of those has, again, multi levels of different things that you can unlock within those different parts. And then there's also the weapons as well, which the weapons are just the range of both the melee and the range weapons is just insane, and the way that they introduce them into the game as well is I think quite good. And again, like the enemies as well in the game, there is quite a good range of enemies in the game as well, which it's
some are fucking annoying as well. Holy shit.
Did you get I don't know if it's a thing that just always happens or if it's only if you do something certain. Did you all get the pet sprite as well? The pet, whatever it's called.
The gas fella.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
You get one that sort of stands in the Bastion.
Yeah, you get.
And,
I mean,
you get a bunch of pets, don't you? That all come and hang
you
out.
get one of the what they call like the birds. Oh, I forget what the.
Yeah, you get a pet bat thing, and you also can get a pet like for alligator, whatever the hell it is. What's the horrible alligator ground thing?
Cool, yeah,
that's it. Yeah, you get a pet one of those too.
Yeah, it's
because then when the Ura attack, all of your pets come and help out in the fight.
Yeah.
So I barely had to do anything in that because my pet what do you call it? An ankle
Yeah.
gator. Oh, for alligator is way better. That's just a Pokemon. Your pet ankle gator just fucking wrecks shop. It's great. It's really good. Again, just a nice little bonus where if you collect all those pets, that'll come and help you out.
Yeah.
But yes, Jack. Yeah, was sort of what I hinted at earlier when I said it's quite shallow combat,
Mm.
but it's very very broad.
Yeah.
There is I've got noted down here. There is even, and I've literally written this, Halo skulls in this game.
Yeah.
Because there's the shrines where you can activate all these different modifiers and they'll all stack and give you XP multipliers, and so you can kind of tweak enemy designs. If you're playing and it's not hard enough, then you go to the shrines and you can actually tweak it. So okay, enemies have this much more health. Oh, and there's going to be more enemies. Oh, actually now there's going to be more bigger enemies and that kind of thing. So you can totally tweak the gameplay experience even further, and then you go and you have all the tonics that you get at the
Yeah.
distillery that can completely change your play style, and then you have all the different weapons, and each weapon has two different upgrade trees that is expanded on further when you get the upgrade for the armory, and so you end up in this situation where at the end everyone's still just kind of pressing X and B. But what happens when they're pressing X and B, and what they're pressing X and B for, by the end of the game, can be heavily divergent.
So I mean, like, I guess in terms of weapons, like, what were you guys? I guess what did you guys start like? So they introduce the weapons to you as you go through the levels, but obviously you can go back to the Bastion, and then you can go to your arsenal and equip the weapons that you want to use in certain levels or just throughout the entire game. So what weapons did you
And I
guys
think to the
use?
game's credit as well, it does a really good job that every single time it introduces a new weapon to you, within about a minute on that level, it gives you an
Yeah,
armory where you can change weapons
yeah.
over again.
Yeah.
So if it gives you a weapon you don't like, you can very quickly stop using it and go back to using weapons and skills
Yeah,
that you do like.
yeah. I mean, so what weapons did you guys start using in that case?
I used almost exclusively the machete and the shotgun.
Yeah. I was the same, I think. I sometimes use the revolvers instead, but I often use the machete and the shotgun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went the super crit on the machete as well, so it can start doing up to like 100 damage a hit and just fucking wipe the floor with
Yeah.
everything. And then I went for the super range with the shotgun. This is the way I went with the upgrades as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what I always end up
I
playing.
think
You experiment a bit, but
I
sorry.
I think I yeah. I see I was before mentioning weapons and stuff, I was thinking that I was going to be too one note because I also used the war machete, but I just had so much fun with it, and it was just it's one of those, like, I think one of the upgrades might have enabled you to do like bleeding damage or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that
One does like bleed damage and one does some other kind of
yeah
damage, and then also you can add like crits and stuff to it, so it becomes just like crazy fucking powerful.
like I thoroughly enjoyed it. I also found myself using the so that special equipment that you get to use. I found myself using the grenade quite a bit.
Yeah, I used the grenade quite a lot as well, actually. So I suppose that is interesting, right? Because I think last time I played this game, which was years ago, I remember actually I think I got the machete and then just went straight back to the hammer. I think I just used the hammer for most of it. But I don't know what made me want to use the machete this time around. But it is interesting that we wanted to go for the exact same. What ranged weapon did you use, Jack?
I'm trying to. I think so when you introduced the what is it the flame cannon, or not like the cannon, but like the
The
yeah.
flamethrower,
So when they introduced that, I
or the bellows, I guess they
yeah,
are,
oh
aren't they?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When they used that, I started like quite enjoying it. I guess towards the end of the game, I started like obviously quite. I guess I found myself just using that calamity cannon quite a bit. just because it was so good. But I
Mm,
think for most of it, I think I was either I'd swap between the musket or the little carbine rifle that you found.
right, yes. Oh, yes, the
Mm.
carbine. Yeah, I did not get along with the
Huh.
carbine.
No, me neither.
Yeah, did not get along with it at all.
That was the one that.
Yeah,
Sorry, that was the one that did like it closed in and you could get like a critical shot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a sniper almost, isn't it? That the carbine.
Yeah, I'd never really used that one.
Yeah, didn't get along with it. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, it's such a huge variance to it, and then obviously when you add all the tonics on top of that as well, that completely change how you like approach combat encounters further. And yeah, there's huge variance to the game. Huge variance in different things you can do, and ways you can go. And like they've got adding the lost and found as
Mm.
well is nice because it means that you don't necessarily feel bad about missing things in levels too, which I always appreciate.
Yeah.
Always appreciate when games do that.
Shout out to the postmaster in Destiny.
I was just thinking about him. Yeah, it's I don't know what else have I got here in my little book of notes about this game. Like it's it is just such a successful combination of elements that I struggle to find. There's a platforming section near the end that is problematic. It is a weak section of video game. For a game that has never really asked you to do any sort of platforming up until this point,
Yeah.
and that hasn't really required any sort of precision from you unless you want to get really deep into the proving grounds. For it to then finish off with a mad dash platforming section that requires relatively precise jumps, I think is a little bit weak.
Very easy on the iPad though, because you literally
Yeah,
just
I
have
bet.
to like tap to where you're going. Because it's like rolling between platforms, right?
Yeah, because you get the upgrade that changes your roll into like a jump,
Yeah.
like a leap, and
So
then it just
there's
becomes, well, do that but jump.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like because you just double tap to jump slash leap on to slash dodge on the iPad. That bit is easy. So the first time I sort of experienced it was just, and then I think I was I was using the virtual controller when I got to it, and then I just switched because it was annoying,
Mm.
and it was just so easy to just be like, okay, well, I tap there, tap there, tap there, and it makes it a lot nicer. So I kind of forgotten about that it even had that bit, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But I mean, like I said, that's if that is the worst thing I can actually say about this whole game, it's pretty fucking incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's it's one of these games that you come across that is just kind of. I think it deserves the acclaim it gets. Right? It's just. I think it's just a kind of for everyone game. I can't imagine someone not enjoying it because you don't even have to get that deeply involved with the combat or anything. You can just go through it and experience it for what it is.
Yeah.
It just seems
But
like
if you wanted to, you could get super into the story and get every single last bit of information, do the new game plus, and get the extra who know wheres.
yeah,
Or if you wanted to, you could activate all the shrines and get super into the combat
yeah,
and like work out exactly how to do all the proving grounds and get all the extra skills. Like you can get so much out
Mm.
of it in so many different ways if you wanted to.
yeah. Man, this game.
Here's something that, and I just checked, we've never ever been able to do on this show so far, on this iteration of this show. We've never been able to talk about the sequel to a game slash spiritual successor to a game from a perspective of one of us actually having played it.
Oh, really?
We've only actually had two games so far in this show that have had sequels, and for those two games, none of us have actually played the sequel to it. None of us have played Splinter Cell, Blacklist, or whatever the sequel to the Moon was. So,
yeah, it did have one, didn't it?
yes, Bastion, in fact, actually has two spiritual successors. Supergiant Games made further games that build on and then begin to start to deviate slightly from this formula. But you have played Transistor, haven't you, Dylan?
I have, yeah. I'd say one. I've not played Pyre, but I've seen a lot of it. I'd say Pyre isn't. Weirdly, I'd say Pyre is a spiritual successor to Transistor, but is in no way related to Bastion.
Yeah.
Because other than like it's an isometric game made by Supergiant, right? Because Transistor is definitely they take what's good about Bastion and then they add these new elements to it. So I think should I go a little bit into it?
Yeah, so I have never played Transistor, and so I played Bastion years ago, and then promptly forgot about it because at the time I wasn't necessarily thinking too critically about games.
Yeah.
Playing it again now has made me think, why the fuck have I not played Transistor? Because Bastion is so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a bit about Transistor.
So Transistor is it's basically you take the basic idea of what Bastion is, this isometric RPG style kind of feel to it, beating up bad guys, right? But they've added. Let me see if I can find out what they call it. I can't see anyway. But they have this kind of strange real-time / it's like a kind of real-time strategy-esque combat-based system. So you can just run around Bastion style and hit things, but you'll likely die. Because it's got this element of you freeze time and they call it turn. Okay, they call it turn, like, I don't know if you have used Python, but when you sort of initialize main in your code, it's like that, but turn. So turn parentheses. That's not important. I don't know why I went so far into that.
Oh, right. So it's literally turn, open brackets, close brackets.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Cool.
So
you call the turn function.
Yeah, basically. And so the idea is that you go into this function and then you into this mode and then you set what you're going to do and then let it play out. And so you've got a certain amount of energy that you can expend in this turn, and each so moving takes a little bit of energy, each attack kind of takes a little bit of energy. And this is basically the way they've expanded on it, the way that makes it a spiritual successor, in that it's exactly the same other than this thing. And that's kind of why I think Pyre isn't a spiritual successor to Bastion, because Pyre mostly only just takes that, I think. They kind of
and the gameplay in Pyre is so different as well, isn't it? It's not necessarily a combat game, is it? It's a future sport game, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think they do take that turn style element, if I remember right. But so there's a little bit more strategy to it, and I think that makes what we were saying about Bastion being very experienced story based, and the combat, while you can do a lot, isn't necessarily important. I think Transistor's almost a little bit the other way. There is a big element of story to it, but I remember when I was playing it, it always felt a little bit secondary.
Yeah.
Because this turn-based system is very important. And so thinking about how you're playing and how you're going to utilize all these different attacks is really what takes up a lot of your focus. So there's not the same kind of feel of focusing on the story that's going on around you. There's also not the narrator, which I think is one of the best parts. So that's sad. But then, ultimately, I think the idea of Transistor is that I'm not sure how explicitly they say it, but I think basically like you're in a computer kind of thing. You're an element of a computer that has been sort of anthropomorphized.
You're a transistor.
Yeah.
A transformer resistor.
I think you're your sword is actually a transistor. I think.
No way.
I can't remember. I think is the idea.
Is it a PMP or an NPN transistor? Semiconductor jokes! It's alright, you don't have to respond and you can keep talking about transistor.
I'm just letting this happen. I hated solid state physics and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, me too. And it's like basically part of my job now.
Yeah.
So would you think it was fair to say that though there is definitely an iterative step between it, because all I know about Pyre is that it's got these gameplay bits, but it is mostly actually about like talking to people and stories and the huge amount of writing and sort of experiential stuff they've put in around the actual like future sport game that's almost just like a means to an end.
Yeah.
So would you say there's actually, and especially since Transistor is lacking the narrator, even though there is a step from one to the next, it feels to me like, from what you're saying, Transistor is a lot more of like, let's take all the gameplay stuff about Bastion and iterate on that and bring that forward and see what that does. And then Pyre is perhaps more about, let's take all of the story stuff and the character work from Bastion and bring that forward and see what that's about.
So there is still.
Or is that more of a simplification?
No, I think that's probably pretty accurate. I don't really know much about the Pyre, but after you've just said it, I do remember seeing all the stuff with the Pyre sort of story. But
yeah, because everything I heard about Pyre was that it is basically like a pure 50-50 split of like, are you playing this sports game, or even like perhaps less to do with the sport, or like less on the sports game, more like a 60-40 split or something, where like you're playing this crazy fantasy basketball, or you're on this road trip and there's this huge branching story and all these different characters you can meet and all this other stuff.
yeah, so I think that's probably pretty accurate, or at least how I felt about Transistor. I mean, maybe I just didn't sort of get as into it as I did with Bastion for whatever reason. Because I mean, I played this in uni, so even then, that's a sort of different time to be playing games, isn't it? And I never felt like I got as into Transistor as I did with Bastion. I never felt that same kind of connection, and I think that might be part of it. Is that it's a lot more just. It's so focused on the gameplay that while it is really fun to play, there's not as much bringing me back to it as there ever was with Bastion. So I think that's probably pretty apt to say, yeah, they built on the, because it's and that's weird that that's how I always thought of it, of Pyre not really being a successor to Bastion, but when you say it as in it's an expansion of the story, it is, right? I mean, and the story is just as important, while Transistor, the story is still important and it was very interesting, but I never felt like it was as important of a part of it, while they have definitely just built on what Bastion had. They've taken that same, like, it's a very similar feeling thing to it, but they've added elements and a real sort of strategic way to play this game. Like, you can really fuck up in Transistor. I feel like in Bastion it was very hard to, you could get overwhelmed, but it was very hard to do something wrong that would result in you dying. You'd probably
I very rarely found myself actually under any threat. Like, if things got rough, you pop a couple of potions, but I never even found myself really running out of potions. Like, I always felt I was in control, you know?
Yeah. Whereas Transistor, I got frustrated with it quite a bit because I'd mess up. So more you get frustrated with yourself than the game, because the game was actually very well made. But you could very easily put yourself into a bad situation, which I think is strange to think of as a thing that's coming from Bastion, because it feels there's just never that element in Bastion, is there? You'd never feel like you could put yourself in a bad situation. But Transistor, I did it all the time. But it does still keep that whole feel of everything is so well tied together in it. That
It's definitely on my watch list. I think next time is like Christmas sales will bring that game down a
Yeah.
bit. I may have to get it because if I think it's about the same length as Bastion, isn't it? It's supposed to be anyway.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I would like to play through it because I just fucking Super Giant. They do some incredible fucking work.
Yeah, they do.
Clearly, because I was super intrigued by Pyre when it came out, but I was at the time still a broke student. I was unemployed, and that wasn't how that was going to happen. I wasn't going to be playing Pyre, but yeah, I think I'm just going to have to. It's going to be on my hit list for the next few months. I think it's just to try and get through both of
Yeah.
those through Transistor and Pyre because they both just seem fucking cool. And playing Bastion has sort of it's reignited that desire to get in there and see what those other two games are all about, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Supergiant have always been one of those. I was the same with Pyre. I never ended up buying it, and I probably should. Maybe I'll do the same, put it on my list. But Supergiant has always, as soon as I found out they were making a new game, and like Chor, who unfortunately isn't here, but we always used to talk about Bastion a lot. And like when Transistor came out, we both played that and got really into it.
Yeah, Chor fucking loves Bastion, doesn't he?
Yeah, which is sad that he couldn't be here.
Yeah.
And I feel
Maybe
like,
he would have used a different set of weapons.
yeah, maybe. I feel like you can understand as well. I mean, I don't know how well that's ever come across in the show for people who listen, but for you guys, and I'm sure you'll understand the whole design aspect of Bastion. It's very evident why Chor would love it, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you can. It's easily understandable that it's his kind of game. But
For sure. And like I think it says a lot that the three of us even, and even the four of us you include Shaw, all for different games so far have expressed enjoyment of very, very specific things.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right? Like there are triggers for all of us for what we like and what we dislike. So for this to be a game that all three of us universally enjoy is actually in a way like pretty incredible.
yeah, it's
You
impressive.
know, this is like Hyper Light Drifter was an incredibly divisive game in this group. Splinter Cell Conviction, a divisive game. To the Moon, even a divisive game in this group. But Bastion is like uniformly, it has provided in every single way that we have wanted it to provide, and that is out of the 6 games we've played. That's the first one that's like uniformly kept everyone engaged. And obviously it's a bit shorter than some of the other games we played. You know, it's not quite the same length as Doom or Splinter Cell, but I think it's a testament to the overwhelming quality of design in this game that it managed to uniformly appeal to all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if it was the same length as all those other games, I think it still would have managed. Because and not necessarily if they'd expanded the story, because you don't want them to. They've nailed it so much that I would worry about them changing anything. Not that they are. This is just some kind of mental experiment. But like you can play the new game plus, and if you were to give us all just keep playing this for this many hours, I think it would still easily keep us interested in playing because there's enough to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could totally play it again and get at least one more entire playthrough of enjoyment out of it. I think. I feel like I could anyway. If I had the time, it wasn't for the fact that I'm juggling like 3 huge AAA games and then also we're about to probably start another game for this. I would have 100% started it up again, but like I just don't have the time to do that. But yeah, like you start it up again, you try some different weapons out, you go do some new Who Know Wheres, and you see what new shit there is you can find in it. It's got at least one more playthrough in it, which is a lot, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I played it through again, and I never felt bored of it. I think, especially for something that doesn't feel like... I think there's lots of games where... So even though the weapon system is broad, I don't think you really ever detract from the game by picking one over the other. Like you don't miss out or anything, right? Whereas there's some
Yeah.
games where the replayability is maybe because you went down the magic route instead of the like melee route or whatever.
Yeah.
So when you do a new game, you get to do it the other way. You get to start from scratch and you get to pretend you're going to be like a dual-handed assault master and not just be another sneaky archer. But Bastion doesn't have that, but it still has that replayability. So I mean, yeah, this is just more of us fawning over an incredibly well-made game, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know. That is the thing to say about it, which is that it is incredibly well made. It is for a debut effort for a very small team,
Yeah.
and also a debut effort not from just the studio, but from the personnel as well. Like these are people who came kind of like these are people who they had done what they had done a Command and Conquer game and a Red Alert game, both of which are not necessarily. I mean, I think they're pretty good, but from the community, are still not particularly well liked.
Yeah.
I don't think anyway. From that may have the Command and Conquer community is fickle, and it seems like about once a year they completely change which games I think are good. I think Tiberium Sun goes from being the best one to the worst one, like literally every single time you go onto their subreddit. Not important. It's for people who had only produced RTSs in the past. They had been designers at EA, designers and writers working on real-time strategy games, to then come through, start a studio, and produce this, which is so far removed from a real-time strategy game.
Yeah.
It's pretty phenomenal. Is the point I was trying to get at there.
No, it's remarkable that because yeah, I mean, I think you're very accurate in saying they're not just a debut uh, games company. Like obviously they've started their new company, but for them this is it's a new style of game they're making. So it's even more impressive that they absolutely destroyed it.
Yeah, like it's like Respawn starts, and Respawn's debut effort is Titanfall. And you go, well, for a debut effort, that's fantastic. But also, Vince Zampella and those fuckers have been making some of the best first-person shooters on the planet for several years before that.
Yeah.
Supergiant, not only is it their first game, but it's the first time any of these people, at least from what I can tell from reading through their wiki pages,
Yeah.
it's the first time any of these people have made something that isn't a real-time strategy game. And I guess you can sort of almost see some of the real-time strategy sensibilities in there in certain ways. With like even if it's just like the perspective, like it's a perspective they are clearly comfortable with utilizing. But yeah, just what a sick fucking game. Shout outs to that entire team, man. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's a wrap, right? That's the show. Have we got anything else to say? I don't. I think we've quite clearly demonstrated how much we adore this game.
Yeah.
And at this point, we'll just be. Oh God, we did for an hour and 25 minutes. I didn't even realize. Yeah. If there's any final sort of wrapping up comments either of you want to make, but I mean that seemed like a good place to finish off.
Yeah, I guess just reiterating what Mark has just said, and it's an incredible game, and it's come from I guess at the time, which was such a small team, and they're still doing it today with some of the new releases that they're, or I guess more recent releases in Transistor and Pyre, which I haven't particularly had a chance to play through, but it's just if somehow you have managed to make it this far in listening to this podcast, then 100%, if you haven't played Bastion, go and play it, because it's an experience, and it's an absolutely amazing one at that.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that's a
For sure.
good place to cut it off. Right. So you can find us on iTunes and SoundCloud for sure under Shouting Over Static. YouTube, I think you said we're
Soon, very, very soon.
Okay.
I've got some time off at the moment, so it's actually going to get done.
Awesome.
I'm almost there. It's just now I have to sit down and actually upload everything, and that is obviously just a really long and boring process. But soon, very soon, we will be back on YouTube. We stopped for a bit because my computer lost the ability to encode video for a bit, and that was weird. Soon.
But it's back. That will be on Low Expectation Media whenever that happens. If you want to follow us on Facebook, I'm sure we'll keep you up to date because Chor's not been doing his job, so we'll get him back on that.
Yeah.
And
I'm back. My schedule should hopefully be getting back to normal, which means we should start hitting an upload schedule more regularly again, and everything else should sort of come back together. That's the plan. The plan is we've had a weird couple of months on this, like 6 episodes or so, which have been a bit loosey-goosey. My plan is to try and bring everything back in line to close out the year.
Yeah, cool.
Because I think that's a good thing to do. There's only a few shows left, really. See if we can get 2018 sort of closed out nicely, and then maybe we might change things up 2019. See what's going on. I don't know. We'll work things out.
We've not really actually discussed a game for next month yet, so we'll probably announce that in the next shouting of the news.
There is some discussions about some games going on.
We've had some chat at least.
Yeah, we will work something out. There are thoughts. Don't know. We'll see if we can get it done before the end of the year. But what with the Christmas holidays coming up,
it might be tricky.
That might be a squeeze. Yeah, don't know.
We'll
see
do
what
our
we
best.
can do.
And
yes.
Yeah, well, I guess you won't speak to us, but we'll speak to you next week, hopefully. I've been Dylan, and this has been Mark and Jack.
Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.